What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with another podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? Really good pod this week. I'm excited about this one. On the movie front, we have Michael Mann's Ferrari and Cord Jefferson's American Fiction, two films that I was able to see early before their release, both Best Picture contenders, Oscar contenders. Really happy to get into those. Also, the Sundance thriller Eileen, starring Anne Hathaway and Thomasin McKenzie, and Netflix's Leave the World Behind from Sam Esmail, starring Julia Roberts and Mahershala Ali. So 4 high-profile movies to talk about. Oh yeah, and also 2 albums. Tate McRae's second album, Think Later, following the big year she's had in 2023. And Nicki Minaj's Pink Friday 2, long time coming, first album in over 5 years. And of course, make sure you come back next week because I'll be talking about my best music of 2023. Yes, my top 10 albums, songs, and my top 10 K-pop songs for the first time as well. So make sure you come back for that. Best movies, best TV shows coming soon as well. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. See the Spotify playlist below. Leave a comment. Let me know it's good. And let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a reaction to BLACKPINK renewing their contract with YG Entertainment. Yes, the second biggest K-pop group in the world, the biggest girl group of all time, BLACKPINK, Jennie, Jisoo, Rose, and Lisa. They're back. They'll be staying as a group. BLACKPINK will remain. Of course, their contract had been up following the customary 7-year K-pop contract, pretty standard. And this has been a talking point, this has been a discussion point for a very long time. Will BLACKPINK renew? If they renew, what will that mean? What's the deal? And of course, people are very interested in that because BLACKPINK is arguably at the peak of their powers, having recently concluded the BLACKPINK World Tour, having not only returned to Coachella for a second time, but having headlined it earlier this year. Historic stuff, of course. A pretty big show at London's Hyde Park as well. They've had a monster year. And YG, more than anything, despite the fact that they're one of the big 4 K-pop labels, they need BLACKPINK to remain part of their group. We know this to be true, of course, because we can look at the stock fluctuations in the price. Whenever there are rumors about issues with the BLACKPINK contract, and it took longer than expected for this renewal to come through, the price would fluctuate wildly. And to put a stamp on that, when we got the official statement from YG that BLACKPINK will return, the YG stock price went up over 20%. Like, this is their breadwinner, like Treasure. Obviously, they've recently debuted Baby Monster. These are small acts compared to what BLACKPINK is, obviously. And I'll be very curious. We just don't really know this detail yet, and I'm sure we won't get like a ton of real detail and clarity on this. But what does this new contract do that's different from the old contract? Obviously, second contracts in K-pop are on the rarer side, groups coming back, although it's a bit more common lately. Of course, look at like the SHINee comeback. Obviously men have to deal with the military service in Korea, women not so much, but YG doesn't have the best history of retaining groups past the first contract. Look at 21, of course, BLACKPINK's predecessor, and Baby Monster having just debuted ostensibly in the wake of BLACKPINK. Nonetheless, what will the time split be? A lot of the rumors have been that there will be time allocated for solo activities for the 4 BLACKPINK members, but then there will also be group activities where they will reunite as BLACKPINK. What does that mean? Because I think a lot of BLACKPINK fans, we've been critical of the lack of general output from BLACKPINK, and that's kind of a YG thing in general. Like, compare BLACKPINK to Twice, they're just not on the same volume level of music. And even if you think it's obviously quality is better than quantity, which of course I agree, BLACKPINK still could be doing a bit more. And I'm curious if that will change, or what will that shift be? I mean, because again, like, even look at like the solo work that we've gotten from the BLACKPINK members. We're talking 2 Rose singles, 1 Jisoo single, 2 Jennie singles, 2 Lisa singles, and a handful of features from Jennie and Lisa. That's it. Over 7 years. It's not a lot. And I hope that full-length solo albums are in the future, if that's what the solo activities entail. I think Jisoo will be spending some time continuing her acting career. It seems like that's a big interest to her. Obviously, all 4 of these ladies are pretty established in the fashion industry and, of course, are global brand ambassadors for some time now. That of course, will continue, you have to imagine. I'm also really curious if YG will, if the Blackpink members will have the freedom. Maybe YG doesn't have a say anymore. Like, will Blackpink have the freedom to collaborate more with Western artists in particular? I mean, what we had, they featured on the Dua Lipa song "Kiss and Make Up" and "Sour Candy" from Lady Gaga, and that's it. And the soloists, I think Lisa has the DJ Snake feature, and Jenny has the song from The Idol, but she was involved in that show. Like, there's just so much opportunity, I think, for Blackpink to really get more established in Western music while retaining their identity. Look no further than just how integrated Jungkook from BTS has really gotten into mainstream Western music, albeit he's been making a lot of English music. Blackpink, though, not strangers to making English music. So I'll just be curious, like, what changes in terms of how the group operates. I would say in general, most K-pop fans were pretty underwhelmed by the Baby Monster debut single Batter Up, primarily for its similarities to past YG songs, including Blackpink songs. I don't know how much juice creatively YG has right now, so I really hope that the Blackpink members will have a lot of say in their musical output, and hopefully they're aware of this kind of creative wheel spinning that it feels like we're starting to get from YG Entertainment. And it's a competitive time. Hybe has been killing it. They're leading the way with all the new groups. Of course, New Jeans, LE SSERAFIM, both had amazing years this year. Blackpink's still at the top. I don't think anyone can knock them off their perch as long as they want to be active. But I just hope that they have the freedom to continue to do more if they so choose. And hopefully we find out what that means to some degree. But I think more than anything, it's good that Blackpink will return, and maybe the group won't be full-time. That's probably the way it's going to go. But more than anything, these four women are better together than they are apart, like most music groups usually are. I think that's certainly the case with Blackpink. We want Blackpink to remain, and per the YG statement, they will go on tour again. They will release another album. I'm going to kind of assume that they won't go on a tour as big as the Born Pink World Tour. I kind of feel like that's the biggest tour they'll ever do. And, this is a contract that lets time for solo activities. I just don't think they're going to do that many dates anymore. So this is probably the peak of their touring output. But we'll see. There's a lot of things we don't know. A lot of things we probably won't find out. But hey, if we get a Blackpink album in 2024, that'd be pretty awesome. I don't know how much music they were really making this year, given how much touring they were doing. We'll see. But yeah, let me know. How are you feeling about the Blackpink contract renewal? Are you surprised that they are seemingly still under YG and maybe not off on the offshoot label, the Black label? The Black label founded by their consistent producing collaborator Teddy Park. Some people thought maybe that would happen. We'll see. Are you surprised by that? Let me know how you're feeling in general. And of course, for more K-pop reviews, see the link below for all the K-pop reviews I've done, and make sure you come back for my best K-pop songs of 2023 coming very soon. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Tate McRae's second album, Think Later. The Canadian pop singer, still only 20 years old, back with her second album. Of course, her debut album, I Used to Think I Could Fly, was only last year, and in general, it's been a very busy time for Tate McRae ever since she blew up on TikTok / due to the help of her successful dancing ability a few years back. And right now, she's hot on the heels of a gigantic smash hit with her single Greedy, which has been a very sticky smash on the charts, even lingering as the Christmas songs begin to take over the charts in December here. And to her credit, I think Greedy is definitely a great example of, pop song construction, just a very sticky melody, and also very enjoyable interpolation of Nelly Furtado's Promiscuous on top of that. Overall, though, I haven't been the biggest Tate McRae fan. Part of that, I think, is just kind of an unhoned sound, an unhoned sonic identity, where I'm not really sure what kind of artist she wants to be. And clearly she might have been also feeling this herself, because her past music, the biggest hit of hers to date, You Broke Me First, definitely more in that sad girl, slightly more emo pop side of things from a lyrical sentiment. And Tate McRae seemingly has left that at least a little bit behind with this new album, Think Later. And I think that's cool. Again, figure out what kind of artist you want to be. My biggest issue still is that Tate McRae's vocals don't really pop for me. I don't think she's the most impressive singer. And as a result, the songs are kind of drowned out with this kind of heavy electronic production this time around on the song. So the songs have to be I think kind of incredibly overproduced to make up for the fact that she can't really carry songs on the strength of her vocals. And if it's not going to be your vocals carrying you, it's going to have to be the production and the lyrics. And I think there are some interesting lyrical moments on the album, but to me, I'm just not really a fan of this sound yet. And I would be remiss not to assume that she's going to continue to hone and fine tune what kind of music she's going to make. She's still very far from a finished product, despite the fact that she's been working with a lot of, big pop producers. RCA Records famously kind of reworked the way they approach marketing off the strength of her very early success years ago. There's a Rolling Stone article about that. Nowadays, she's working with Ryan Tedder, Greg Kurstin. There's a lot of big names on the record. But yeah, I think just kind of going through the tracks, I mentioned Greedy, which deserves a ton of credit for just being a really sticky pop song. I think that one's good. I think Hurt My Feelings is probably my next favorite song off Think Later. There's really fun rhythm to that and also kind of a sticky outro. There's a lot of production on that, of course, but sometimes it's to good effect. It's catchy, so I respect that for sure. Grave, that one stands out from the more ballady side of things. Tate McRae, one of her friends is Olivia Rodrigo. She's certainly a peer of Olivia's, and when she was making the more emo side of things, you could definitely see more of an inspiration. Clearly, they're not as closely aligned musically as they maybe once were. Nonetheless, Grave, you can see the comparison. But it's pretty powerful as it goes. X's also pretty catchy, fun lyrics there. But yeah, I think overall, Tate McRae, I'm still going to be checking for her. The music videos, the dance performance that she does with her songs, it's quite impressive. She's a talented dancer, and I think there is certainly a lane for her to become a interesting pop star. But I think we're still kind of working on the sound, which again is not that big a concern right now because she's still only 20 years old. And when you can have a monster hit come around every cycle or so, the way she just had again with Greedy, I think she's doing just fine thus far, but hopefully better things to come. But let me know, how did you feel about Tate McRae's Think Later? Are you hoping for more in the future like me? Let me know. And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Nicki Minaj's 5th album, Pink Friday 2. Yes, Nicki back. First album since Queen 5 years ago, in 2018. And if you think about the time between Nicki Minaj albums, the rap landscape, specifically the female MC rap landscape, has really changed. And I didn't really put this together until I started thinking about it, but back in 2018, obviously we had the Cardi B debut album, but apart from that, Megan Thee Stallion was just starting to pick up steam with the Tina Snow mixtape. All these other female rappers we almost take for granted these days, they were nowhere to be found yet. And now we're at a time where it's never been a better time to be a female rapper. It is no longer a special occurrence when a female rapper stands out and impresses you and does good work. It is now just part of rap. And obviously that is great. And Nicki, of course, deserves so much credit for paving the way for this because, of course, for the long time, for really the first 2/3 of Nicki Minaj's career, she was kind of the only game in town in terms of a new female rapper at the top, pushing things forward. And, Nicki, she's aligned herself with some of the new MCs like Ice Spice and Coi Leray and Sexy Red. She's not necessarily been a fan of other ones. There's been some beef, some Cold War beef, etc. We don't have to get into that right now. Nonetheless, Nicki has stayed around in between albums. I think a big part due to being a big collaborator. And lately, she's been one of the most successful people at kind of jumping on and following the trend of really big, flashy samples in your new songs. Of course, her collab with Ice Spice, Barbie World, flipping Aqua's Barbie Girl for the Barbie film soundtrack earlier this year. Big hit. Red Ruby to Sleaze, another good example of this. One of Nicki's singles from earlier this year, the Never Leave You sample, was very obvious there, of course. Another single, Super Freaky Girl, with the very obvious Rick James sample. Nicki's been doing this lately. And honestly, she's been one of the best at doing it. And Pink Friday 2 gives you more of that beyond these early singles. And I have to say, I didn't have a lot of necessarily hype for the distinction of it being Pink Friday 2. I was just excited for a new Nicki Minaj album after 5 years. We needed one. But Pink Friday 2 is hardly the first, quote, sequel to a landmark blockbuster rap album. This is very common in rap over the years with big artists. And even if it's really a sequel in name only, it's still kind of exciting. And I have to say, this is an album that it's too long for sure. We definitely could have cut some of these songs, but I think overall, it definitely met the hype for me. I think Pink Friday 2 was great. I think there's a lot of bangers on this. And more than anything, reminds you of just how talented Nicki Minaj is as a rapper. She's incredibly versatile, but when she really gets into the rapping bag, as she does a few times on Pink Friday 2, that's when I get really excited, because I love rapping-ass rapper Nicki Minaj, because she's up there with the best of them. But yeah, there's a lot to get into with this album. Yeah, so just as I'm going through it here, there's a lot of samples to highlight, and I think that there's a big criticism to have about Pink Friday 2, beyond just being a little too long. It's that Nicki's talented enough to not need to rely on such high-profile samples, and she doesn't need to be the one keeping this going. So overall, some of these samples are more effective than others. Nonetheless, just kind of going through the track list here. Track 2 immediately got my attention, Barbie Dangerous, because this is a Notorious Thugs, Biggie Smalls flip by Nicki Minaj. Nicki, reworking the beat, using the flow, of course, a classic Biggie song, and it's fire. This is rapping rapper Nicki. This is what I want from her. This is awesome. It's not the first time, of course, that Nicki has taken from Biggie Smalls. Of course, Barbie Dreams was a big Biggie sample off Queen. She used a Biggie flow for Four Door Aventador back in the day as well. She's been doing this, but she's good enough to pull this off. Obviously, interpolating, sampling Biggie, do it at your own peril. You have to bring it to pull it off, but I think Nicki Minaj pulls it off. I was pretty impressed. One of my favorite songs on the album for sure. FTCU, Fuck the Club Up. Again, kind of obvious sample there. Beep Beep. I think this one also goes hard. Kind of like a pop trill beat specifically. Shout out Ice Spice. But I think this one's pretty hard. Let Me Calm Down featuring Cole. I think that one's all right. But R&B featuring Lil Wayne and Tate McRae. Man, I thought that was really fire. I thought both features were really good. I like that song a lot. Needle. Interesting. A Drake collab from Nicki. This has been hyped. It had been a while. It had been since before Queen that we got a new collab between the two of them. And, it's interesting because it's kind of like a tropical house song, a la like Drake's Passion Fruit, I guess you could say. Not my favorite of their collabs. Obviously, they have some classics from back in the day, like Bedrock and Moment for Life and Make Me Proud, etc. Like, it's hard to get back to those highs of 10 plus years ago. Nonetheless, it's nice. One of the best songs on the album, though, has to be Everybody, featuring Lil Uzi Vert. The Move Your Feet sample, again, very obvious, but also just really catchy. It really grabs you. I liked it. I liked Cowgirl as well. Big Difference, I think, is hard. It's really fun switch up halfway through where the beat completely flips and Nicki does a new flow. Red Ruby to Sleaze, I mentioned, with the Never Leave You sample. Notable because that one has a pretty obvious Megan Thee Stallion diss on that song. This song is months old at this point, but I Don't Fuck With Horses since Christopher Reeves. Make of that what you will. Pink Friday Girls, another obvious sample here. Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And the beat's kind of like tweaked with some like Bay Area like 808s bouncing around there. I thought that was pretty fun. Of course, Super Freaky Girl with the Rick James sample. People know this one. My Life with the Heart of Glass sample. Nikki Hendrix with Future. I thought they were a really good match together. I think that one's a big highlight for sure. So yeah, I mean, that's like, it's a 22 song, 70-minute album, but there's a good like dozen tracks or so that I think are real highlights. And it's just nice to get a lot of new music from Nicki just because it's been so long. And Nicki, there's so much noise around her. Obviously, she's not afraid to speak her own mind. And obviously, the Barbs are not afraid to speak on things either. But it's good to like get new work because Nicki is good enough to warrant all this attention. And it's fun when we kind of get past the BS and actually get back to the music, because when we get back to the music with her, it pays off, pays dividends. I think it's a better album than Queen, for sure. And it honestly, not that it's much of a sequel, but it's worthy of the Pink Friday name because I think it's a pretty good record. So yeah, shout out Nicki Minaj, shout out Pink Friday too. Hopefully we don't have to wait another 5 years between albums. Interestingly, Nicki, she sounds, as good as ever for the most part. And, now she's 40, just turned 41 years old. She's kind of an OG at this point, but she sounds great. And I think she will help continue the trend of rappers going beyond their 40s and continuing to have fruitful careers. I see no reason not to believe that. But let me know, how did you feel about Nicki Minaj's Pink Friday 2? Let me know. And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Eileen, the new psychological thriller film from William Oldroyd, starring Anne Hathaway and Thomasin McKenzie. Eileen debuted back at Sundance earlier this year and is now out in release. William Oldroyd, of course, not the most esteemed director per se, but famously his last film, Lady Macbeth, was the source of the breakout role for Miss Florence Pugh. And Eileen is adapted from the 2015 novel of the same name by Otessa Moshfegh. And Eileen, I think this is a movie that I didn't love. I don't even know if I liked it that much, but I appreciate it for what it is. It is a kind of classic, kind of old school thriller, a bit small in scope, but also svelte in a nice way. It's a pretty brief movie, only about like 97 minutes, and has some fun performances in it, has a fun twist at the end, and is a decent watch, even if ultimately for me, some of the twists, some of the tonal shifts didn't quite land for me. So Eileen, it's, set in like 1960s, like Massachusetts area, and Thomasin McKenzie, as a young woman, is playing the titular Eileen, and Eileen is working at a like juvenile detention facility. She's pretty aimless and bored in her life. She doesn't seem to get a lot of attention from her coworkers or people in town. She's really just kind of viewed as like an extension of her alcoholic former cop father, played by Shea Wiggum. And yeah, she just kind of seems a bit kind of at loss with like what to do with herself. And things change in her life when a new physician shows up at the juvenile detention facility that she works at, Rebecca, played by Anne Hathaway. And this is one of those like kind of like great textbook Anne Hathaway performances. She has the big blonde blowout, but she's having a real fun time in this role. Flashy, charismatic, and Rebecca seems to take kind of a liking to Eileen as, a new person in town. She develops some sort of a friendship with Eileen. And Thomasin McKenzie, this is pretty familiar stuff for her at this point, kind of playing the like wounded bird, wallflower type young woman that she's done a few times to great effect already. Of course, people probably best know this from Last Night in Soho or Leave No Trace. And I think Thomasin McKenzie, she's a good actor. I would like her to maybe get out of this box and find a different type of thing to do, at least a little bit. And Eileen gives her a little bit to do at times, but the overall characterization, I was immediately kind of annoyed with how familiar it felt from having knowledge of her past work. That's not necessarily the fault of Eileen, but it felt a little safe from a choice from a rising young actress such as herself. Nonetheless, I think it's funny because this is a psychological thriller film that kind of like leans into like some psychosexual stuff. But to me, that was some of the most inconsistent stuff with the movie, especially because a lot of it's kind of drop. I don't know. I think ultimately, like Eileen, just a bit thin with like where it's trying to lead you as the viewer with the just kind of the tonal sensibilities of the movie. Like, and on the surface, there's a lot of things to enjoy about it. Like, I think Shea Wiggum, the gruffness he brings as this really kind of degenerate alcoholic and shitty dad, um, he does a great job in the movie. And also, Mayor in Ireland does I think, really fantastic job as Mrs. Polk, who is the mother of a young man recently brought to the facility. And there's a scene in Act 3 between Mackenzie Hathaway and Ireland that is really strong. Definitely a big kind of like eyebrow raiser, like gasp inducing twist with this movie. I'm not going to spoil it, but like that was something that I didn't quite see coming, but also presents a huge shift for the movie and what you thought you were watching. And I don't know if to me, it was kind of resolved a bit too cleanly or a bit too quickly, I guess you could say. So I don't know, like Eileen, it's just like I appreciate the attempt, but I found the movie to be a bit of a challenge until the twist happened, and then I just didn't think we had enough time with the twist. And as much as I enjoy a period film that doesn't have cell phones, and you just kind of have a movie star performance from someone like Hathaway at the center of the movie, like I just don't think it completely comes together to really kind of rise above uh, the skeleton of what the movie is, which is kind of a mismatch of tone and structural like challenges with the twists. So yeah, Eileen, I think it's an okay watch, but to me, I wasn't grabbed enough to really endorse it, and I was kind of a bit let down because this was one of the most like hyped movies out of Sundance, to be honest. Nonetheless, better days are ahead, I think, for all involved. But yeah, let me know how'd you feel about Eileen. Did you like it more than me? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Leave the World Behind, the new psychological apocalyptic thriller film from Netflix, directed by Sam Esmail, starring Julia Roberts, Mahershala Ali, Ethan Hawke, and Mahala Herald. This is adapted from the Rumen Alam novel of the same name from just a few years ago. Netflix won the bidding war, put this out as one of their fall slate of movies. Perhaps not as hyped up as, say, Maestro, but still a significant release from Netflix nonetheless. And I was certainly anticipating Leave the World Behind because I'm a big fan of Sam Esmail. Mr. Robot, his signature series on USA that ended back in 2019, that made my top 10 shows of the 2010s. I was absolutely floored by that show. One of my favorites of all time, for sure. Also really liked his Amazon 2-season series Homecoming, which of course featured Julia Roberts in its first season. And when you look at this cast, Julia Roberts, Hawke, Mahala Herald, of course, one of our favorites right now, thanks to her star turn on Industry on HBO, and of course the return of Mahershala Ali, one of our great movie stars. It's kind of selling itself, I would have to say. And in a small role, we have Kevin Bacon as well. Always nice to see him. And yeah, this is a film that I think has a lot of those Sam Esmail trademarks. The cinematography, the blocking, the camera panning, the shifting perspective from the first floor to the basement, inside of the wall to the outside. Very reminiscent to all those of us who know Sam's camera work in the past, his visual flair. Definitely familiar, but in a good way. And that was all great. I think this is a film that will definitely be challenging to some. I think because the ending's probably a bit polarizing due to the kind of lack of overt resolution. This is a film that has a gigantic conflict at its very core, but is not a film that's really trying to tell you much about that conflict, I guess you could say. It's more interested in how these characters are reacting to what they do and don't know. So it is absolutely a must-watch movie, but I think the takeaways will really depend on the viewer. So the premise is ultimately really solid. You have Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke's characters. They're married. They take their two children with them on a kind of spur-of-the-moment vacation, leaving their home in New York City, leaving Brooklyn, and taking a seemingly weekend vacation over on Long Island, renting a house. And in the middle of the night, the owner of this house, who they rented from, from on Airbnb or whoever, Herschel Ali, it's his home. He shows up with his, adult daughter, played by Mahala, and they need a place to stay. And that's kind of where like the movie like kind of sets off, because there's a caginess to Julia Roberts' character Amanda, where she just doesn't trust GH, Mahershala's character. She's suspicious and she's prickly. And I think credit to Julia, because she plays a character that is really unlikable for the majority of the movie. But anyway, they end up staying together, and what becomes increasingly clear is that some kind of apocalyptic event is happening. And the TV goes out, the internet goes down, GPS stops working on the phone, GH finds a sat phone at a neighbor's home, even that isn't working, and it starts to become pretty clear that the United States is under some kind of coordinated attack, although it's unclear by who or for what reason. You have Ethan Hawke's character Clay trying to drive into town, getting a Death to America pamphlet dropped on him by a drone when he's in his car. Like, it's definitely unsettling, and the movie leads to some big shots, some big moments where where GH, he survives a plane crashing on the beach very close to where he was, after stumbling on the wreckage of a previously already crashed plane. Right, that's like a big set piece thing. You have a scene where Mahala and Julia look out and they get this gaze upon Manhattan, and they see mushroom clouds and bombs. And at one point, there's this big, almost like EMP noise distortion that hurts everyone's ears, and all that's very unsettling and disturbing as the characters start to adapt to their new reality. But really, the movie isn't interested in telling you anything about that conflict at all, anything about what's happening to the greater world. It's really only interested in these characters and how they're reacting with each other, coming to grips, coming with acceptance of their new situation. GH and Mahala's character Ruth realizing that they're never going to see their mother/wife ever again. She's almost assuredly gone. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing, and it's funny because the way the movie, concludes. We have this scene where Julia and Ethan Hawke's teenage son, he gets sick, seemingly bitten by a bug in the woods. We're kind of unclear what happened. Did he get radiation? Did the loud noise affect him? It's obviously left ambiguous intentionally. They end up tracking down Kevin Bacon's character, who GH knows from the neighborhood, and trying to get help, because they can tell he's kind of a prepper type character. And he gives you like the faintest of morsels of like what's going on with the greater plot of the outside world. But even then, the whole like having to protect your own versus helping others thing, I guess it's a bit like on the nose. It doesn't get too deep. But where a classic like Samism happens, classic S-Smile touch, is the immediately following moments where the movie ends, where it's a culmination of everything that's happened with Julia and Hawke's daughter character to this point. She's younger than their son, and she's been obsessed with trying to finish watching Friends. She's on the last episode, but her tablet is no longer working. There's no connection. Even the TV can't play the reruns. And obviously she's a very like screen-addled Gen Z, Gen Alpha kid, and yet she feels helpless and unable to continue to discern the happiness that she got from that show as a result of being able to finish watching Friends. And it's actually like, I think, pretty amusing and underrated aspect of this film, because it's that sense of innocence, but also like direct value proposition on like your broader entertainment. Having like the youngest character be the only one to like seemingly have some kind of center as you watch everyone else kind of start the spiral and come to grips with what's going on. It's pretty amusing. And the way the movie ends is Rose, the daughter, she stumbles across a neighbor's home who GH had found, GH was aware of, and then Kevin Bacon's character let on that they might have a doomsday shelter in the basement because he had heard about some off-permit work going on, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Rose kind of stumbles on that house looking for food, and she stumbles across the safe room and discovers this fully functioning, ready-to-go safe room that the family clearly should move to ASAP, both families. And in it, what does she find but a wall of DVDs and VHS? And what does she find but the Friends final season collect DVD? Puts it on, and she puts on the final episode, and her face breaks into a smile. We hear the Friends theme song begin, and the movie ends. And I think it's a very bold choice, I have to say. I think some of the stuff along the way is probably where the movie maybe might lose some people, and that, I think, abruptness with a lack of clarity in the ending definitely might lose some people as well. But I really like that as an ending. I think some of the other stuff is a bit surface level, where Mahala's character, Ruth, she's really not hitting it off with Julia Roberts as Amanda at all. Amanda and Ruth are constantly butting heads. It's kind of referenced that maybe Amanda was distrustful of them from the start because they're both black, but it's never really said anything more beyond that. It's not really explored too much. She's kind of broadly a Karen character that definitely could have used more touch if you were going to take it in that route. Also, there's some amusing moments with wild animals outside. Rose keeps seeing a gigantic herd of deer. There's a really cool split-second scene at night where you see all the deer in the backyard. You see the glowing lights out in the darkness. That was sick. But there's a moment towards the end out in the woods where Amanda and Ruth together have to kind of scare off the CGI deer herd. And I'm not really sure exactly what the purpose of that scene necessarily is, to be honest. But it was interesting. So yeah, I think overall, Leave the World Behind, it's unlike just about anything else I've seen this year. And I mean, when you have Julia Roberts and Hawk and Harold and Mahershala Ali, who just oozes charisma, oozes presence, as we all know at this point, they're all giving great performances. And even if I think the script might be a little up and down overall, and again, that resolution might not be for everyone, I think overall it's a worthy endeavor. And I really hope Sam continues to keep working. I know his Megalopolis adaptation at Apple got canned right before the strike began due to a lot of uncertainties with the strike. So we don't really know what he's working on next. But of course, I think Sam Esmail is a pretty in-demand talent. And of course, we know all these actors are super in demand as well. We'll be hearing from them as well. So yeah, let me know, how did you feel about Netflix's Leave the World Behind? Did the polarizing aspects make or break it for you? Let me know what you thought. And for more movie reviews and my best movies of 2023, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of American Fiction, the new comedy drama film starring Jeffrey Wright, written and directed by Cord Jefferson in his feature film debut. Cord Jefferson, perhaps not a household name, but should be of particular interest to people in the know due to his really esteemed television career over the last half decade or so. Honestly, one of the standout TV writers of recent times, of course, working on shows like The Good Place and Station 11 and Succession and Master of None, then famously winning the Emmy for writing for the Hooded Justice origin episode, arguably the greatest episode of that fantastic miniseries from 2019. So the Cord Jefferson debut feature film sold itself to me. I was going to see it no matter what it was. And then when you take that and combine it with a cast featuring Jeffrey Wright and Sterling K. Brown and Tracy Ellis Ross, it's pretty impressive. I really enjoyed American Fiction. I thought the satirical basis of the film, which is namely about how black people exist in culture and how perhaps at times they might pander to what white people expect of them within society, and a bunch of other things as well. I thought the satirical, humorous bend to that premise was done really well. The humor was great despite a heavier, serious subject matter at its core. And also the movie features, I think, genuine heart and family dynamics. And again, despite having a pretty consistently humorous tone. And I had a great time with this. I saw this in an early screening. It's not actually opening for another 2 weeks, but the screening I went to was packed, and the humor was raucous. Like the crowd was loving it, and I have to say I was really into the movie, and I just think it's really impressive. And even if like I've seen some criticism of the film that were like the masters of this script, the satire versus the character dynamics. Maybe that is a bit in contrast with itself, in conflict with itself. You have a lot of goals with parts of the script, and maybe that's a bit messy or a bit ill-defined. To me, all those like disparate parts of this script like really work. So I would enthusiastically endorse American Fiction. Of course, this is a film that premiered back in Toronto and has been slowly preparing to release here on this deluge of Best Picture contenders. And it's funnily the second film shot in and around Boston that's contending for Best Picture this year. Just like the holdovers from Alexander Payne, funny enough. It's really surreal for the second time in like a month that I'm watching a movie at AMC Boston Common and I see on screen stuff shot like 100 yards from where I'm currently sitting. Like, it's just a very weird feeling, I have to say. But cool. And yeah, so let's get into American Fiction. So I'm going to kind of spoil some stuff broadly, although it's not a movie that's like ripe with like tons of plot to spoil. So kind of getting into the meat of American Fiction, Jeffrey Wright plays this author / professor character who's living out in California called Thelonious Ellison, nicknamed Monk. Just a fantastic character name, I have to say. And Monk is kind of forced into a leave of absence at his college due to his kind of frustrations with progressiveness and the attitudes of his young students, his Gen Z students. And I think the big part of that is Jeffrey Wright's or Monk's belief that the way black people are portrayed in culture is often due to under the gaze of how white people like to see them, and a lot of black artists play into that with kind of a pandering nature. Monk is an author, and he sees that his books that are very academic are not recognized as quote or recognized as black literature just because he's a black man, even though they're not actually about anything about being black. And then he contrasts that with this rival author character played by Issa Rae, who writes a pretty obviously like pandering account of like quote what white people like want to see, the misery porn, the drugs, the broken families, or the struggle, the come up, and he's just kind of frustrated with that, which he sees as limiting and constricting to like what the actual black experience is and what it actually means to be black, and things like that. And in general, like that tone throughout the movie, I think it's handled really well because it's pretty sharp, it's pretty biting. There's some really like great commentary and just great pieces of writing, great pieces of great delivery, great lines, but also like the humor, as I've been saying, is very consistent. So there, like a lot of this stuff is pointed out to you in a very humorous tone, and like the lines just really hit. And Monk, he's brought back home, back to the Boston area, due to his mother is going through some health issues. It's revealed that she has Alzheimer's, and he has to kind of reconnect with his family, reconnect with his sister, played by Tracee Ellis Ross, reconnect with his brother, played by Sterling K. Brown, and Monk has been kind of distant from the family, and that's kind of the consistent for some time. It's not a new development. He's kind of a gruff guy, and he doesn't exactly check in on things. And I think that, like I said, the family dynamics with the movie, I think, are really good. It should come as no surprise that Sterling K. Brown delivers some really emotional moments. I think we know this from Sterling K. Brown. At this point, he's one of our great actors, and I think he does a great job. He has some great humor. There's a really funny moment he has on the beach in the South Shore area in New England. But also, there's some really heavy stuff that's about him personally and about his life, and how it reacts to the rest of his family. And speaking to like the warmth, his mother hired like a housekeeper for a long time, Lorraine, played by Myra Lucretia Taylor. Just the whole warmth with that character and how she finds some love later in life with this local acquaintance named Maynard. All of that I thought was just really heartwarming, I have to say. Also, I really enjoyed Monk's like budding relationship with Coraline, who's like a neighbor at the family beach home. Coraline, played by Erica Alexander. I thought she did a great job. And yeah, like the movie, like I think kind of the brilliance of the movie, right, is when Monk, like going on a lark, decides to write one of these like overtly pandering to liberal white people type books about stereotypical black experience, and he's doing it as a joke to kind of give an fu to all the publishers who don't want to buy his smart books, and he doesn't expect it to go anywhere, and then it becomes a bestseller, and things kind of spiral from there. He gets a movie deal. He does it under a pseudonym as well, so there's a lot of fame and notoriety with this kind of anonymous character. And Adam Brody plays a really funny movie director character, and yeah, like that kind of stuff I think really spirals to a fun way. I think the ending is pretty fun as well. So yeah, I mean, American Fiction, it's not out yet, so I don't really want to go like too deep on that. But Issa Rae, I think, has a really meaningful moment. Monk and Issa Rae's character come together because they both are brought on to do this literary award in New England. This like kind of book ranking, book award giving, and they're like overtly hired to make the body more diverse, and that's like set up front. And Monk just like rolls his eyes at it, man. And they have a really good conversation where Monk basically challenges who she is for writing her pandering book and finding all that success and who is to blame for those things. I think it's a really good conversation that comes out of that too. And yeah, like I really like the movie. I was kind of expecting to be impressed in some way just because I've been a fan of Corey Jefferson for some time. It sounds like Jeffrey Wright is firmly in the best actor mix. I would imagine this screenplay is in the best adapted screenplay mix as well. Best Picture nomination seems pretty safe as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely a unique movie where it has some kind of old school elements to it, but with a really like modern and sharp script. So it'll definitely be in my top 10 movies of 2023. Make sure you come back for that very soon. And of course, let me know what you thought of American Fiction, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, how'd you like it? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Ferrari, the new biopic film from Michael Mann, starring Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz. Yes, Michael Mann is back. His first movie in 8 years. First movie since Black Cat in 2015. It's been a minute. And honestly, Michael Mann is continuing the year of the octogenarian in film. Martin Scorsese, Michael Mann, Ridley Scott, all of our esteemed 80-plus-year-old filmmakers are dropping bangers on our heads to end the year. Because I thought Ferrari ripped. I like this movie a ton. I have a pretty good chance it's going to make my top 10 at the end of the year. Come back for that. And yeah, this movie's coming out on Christmas after premiering in Venice earlier in this year. I was lucky enough to catch a early screening. I'll start with no spoilers and spoil it towards the end. So right off the bat, I really enjoyed the movie. I think what's really cool about Ferrari, besides just Michael Mann making us another movie, which in and of itself sells itself, is that it's a smartly done biopic, which I wasn't really too concerned about. I wasn't really worried about this movie, but this is a movie set in 1957 over the course of like 3 months. This is not the entire life story of this great person. Nope, this is a focus, specific tale, and Ferrari, the movie, is such a better entity as a result of that decision. Also, the casting is great. Adam Driver in the title role as Enzo Ferrari. He's actually 20 years younger than the Enzo he's portraying in this movie. In the film, Enzo is 59, but Adam Driver is, I think, actually able to age up quite well. And Adam Driver, he's a big guy. He has a presence, and he's really able to imbue, I think, that presence, but also that kind of like steely passion that was so famous about Enzo Ferrari. And the reason his workers called him commendatore, like it is the presence and the mystique of Enzo Ferrari, the man, driver's really able to imbue that, and like the way he kind of like walks and lords over the people around him, like it's a really great use of Adam Driver's strengths and his talents. This is of course another movie with Adam Driver doing an Italian accent after House of Gucci just 2 years ago, and honestly, it's not like the best Italian accent, but he's going for it and it's fun. It's a movie in English almost entirely anyway. It's not a big deal. But yeah, I think he's very convincing. Also, Penelope Cruz as Enzo Ferrari's wife slash business partner, Laura Ferrari. Jeez, incredible performance from Cruz. The kind of core crux of this movie, the core crux of that relationship, and the reason they're estranged and kind of at odds is that they've kind of fallen out of love, largely due to the loss of their son Dino due to muscular dystrophy. And Laura is handling that grief in a very different way from Enzo, who's a much more reserved and emotionally contained person, whereas Laura is not afraid to really tell you how she feels. But also, it's a really great, I think, like piece of writing, like how her character is weaved in to the story, partially due to her attachment to the Ferrari empire on the business side of things. It's much more than just the wife role, and it should be no surprise that a Michael Mann movie has a leading man, and the greatness, but the troubling nature of the brilliance and genius of the man is kind of at the forefront of the movie. That's not surprising to most Michael Mann stories, right? No surprise here at Ferrari. But I think the female characters really fit in well here. And of course, that's Laura Ferrari, his estranged wife, as well as Lena Lardy, played by Shailene Woodley, which of course is Enzo Ferrari's mistress, who he's spending a lot of time with, who also happens to be the mother of his illegitimate son, Piero. And the kind of the build up with the movie as Laura learns about this family. She knew he was seeing other women, but she did not know that Enzo had another family hidden off in the countryside, while they're ostensibly living together in Modena, where the Ferrari HQ is. I really like how that works, And meanwhile, of course, it's still a really good movie about like a racing team, the Ferrari racing team, and about business. It's coming at a very pivotal point in the story here. 1957, Ferrari is kind of subsumed by all this debt and is under a lot of pressure and kind of guidance to sell the company to perhaps Ford or even Fiat, of course, the big Italian car company. And there's a lot riding on this upcoming race, the Miglia, which is kind of this like cross country, like kind of like almost rally race across Italy, and the marketing benefits of winning the race and beating the rival cars of Maserati, for example, would really benefit Ferrari financially as a business. So it's kind of like the confluence of Enzo Ferrari's true passion, which is cars and racing as a former racer, and the success of his business that he needs to be able to continue to fund his racing team. So I think all that like really works pretty well, honestly. And there's a few really memorable, like visceral shots of filmmaking. There's one at the end that's incredibly shocking. I'm going to start to spoil the movie, where you forget or you get reminded of who made the movie, right? I think early on, you see this pretty cool with Ferrari's, one of his test drivers dies during a speed test, and you actually see the body. It's clearly a dummy, but like the body jettisoned way up in the air, watching the guy about to be killed. And it's an introduction to Enzo the man. He's pretty calculating and unapologetic and quick to move on, not someone who kind of dwells on the emotional things. And he's like very quickly hires this new driver, Alfonso De Portago, this young kind of upstart guy. And then on the other side, when we're in the Millie race and we're at the very end, and De Portago, who's kind of been like this young upstart driver who's engendering himself to the Ferrari team, even though he's not the most experienced driver yet, he's doing pretty well in the race towards the end, and then he just kind of has bad luck, hits something in the road, gets a puncture in the tire, flips, careens off to the side and takes out a ton of civilians and killing himself, of course, as well. And that moment is like a gasp, jaw dropper type moment. And then the lead up to that, of course, the racing stuff's like really pulsing and fun. It's filmed well. It feels fast. It feels exhilarating. It's really cool to be in these single-seater cars in the 50s. It's a lot different than, of course, Formula One today and another similar racing. Watching the danger of racing back in the day, so obvious as you're watching the movie and watching civilians, spectators being so close to the action. And then you see something go so horribly wrong, and you watch the car flip and just take people out, and you see people get bisected, and including children. Like, it is a pure moment of like ultra violence and despair. And it was a real jaw dropper, but it's incredibly earned, and I think it's played off like incredibly well. It did not feel tasteless in any way. Just through the progress of the movie, like, there's just a lot of awesome scenes, man. Like, I mentioned the early test scene. I thought that was great. Seeing Enzo use the press and control the press and how he talks to the media and interacts with them, really good job of examining who the guy was and how much stature he carried and how he wielded that. And he was a calculating man, both publicly and behind the scenes. I liked that. I like it's kind of just a throwaway scene. There's a barbershop scene though, where all the locals are shitting on the Modena football team for not being any good, not being the pride of the city. I thought that was hilarious. Early on, there's a really great church scene where you have the priest giving a sermon talking about like how God is like the engine or something along those lines. Meanwhile, Ferrari and all his employees are there in attendance, and they all take out their stopwatch when they hear the test starting gun go off in the distance, and they're just staring at their stopwatch, recording the test in church as you hear the sermon going off. And like, is that on the nose? Of course it is, but to me it was a great scene, and also kind of call it back just a little bit to Godfather, when you have the communion scene or confirmation scene, whatever it is, when all the guys are getting whacked. Thought that was pretty fun. I think I had one criticism. I guess I think like the head of Maserati, like the head businessman of Maserati, and also the head of the team. I believe he actually is named Maserati. I believe that it's the titular Maserati as well. I'm pretty sure. He was a bit hokey, a bit cartoony, I guess you could say. I was curious how accurate it is, like watching like Ferrari and Maserati before the race is about to begin, like giving like specific instructions to all their drivers as they're about to begin. And it's like, don't you have a pre-race meeting like the day before to go over all this strategy? It's all good. It's movie making. They were effective moments, for sure. Silver Fox Patrick Dempsey as kind of the wily veteran on the Ferrari racing team. I enjoyed that performance and presence, even if it's a quite small role. Just kind of an Easter egg for racing fans. Like, one of the Maserati drivers is Sterling Moss, one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time. Thought that was pretty cool. Noticed that right away. I really like Penelope Cruz's scenes with the banker at the bank, where you could tell like the banker is just afraid of her passion and her resolve, and you can tell how nervous he gets when she starts asking questions, getting closer to Enzo's secrets. Thought that was done well. But yeah, I think like the movie just has like a lot of great tension and build up with how the progression of the Ferrari business and the racing progress goes, and also just really, I think, develops and hones in on the triangle of the Ferraris and Lardy, and will Enzo acknowledge his illegitimate son question really coming into focus at the end, and like you're really invested in that decision, and this like really innocent young boy who just wants to spend more time with his dad and doesn't really even know anything is really off. I don't want to say we're at like a golden era of racing movies, not like we're getting a ton of them, but it's been a good run. Ford versus Ferrari 4 years ago from James Mangold, obviously exhilarating film. This movie, Ferrari, Michael Mann, a movie that, by the way, he had been developing since the 90s. The screenwriter of Michael Mann's Ferrari, Troy Kennedy Martin, died in 2009. This movie's been in development a long time. Pretty awesome. But between Ford versus Ferrari, Michael Mann's Ferrari, and then next year from Apple and Joseph Kosinski, we have the Brad Pitt F1 movie still untitled. Pretty great time if you're a fan. And I think this is both a great example of how to do an inspired biopic, but also it's a great racing movie in its own right. So I think it really has kind of something for anyone. So yeah, Ferrari coming out on Christmas. Let me know when you've seen it, what you think about it. Make sure you come back for my best movies of 2023. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, again, make sure you come back for my best music of the year, best TV and best movies coming soon as well. And then also next week, going to be talking The Iron Claw, Wonka, Poor Things, The Boys in the Boat from George Clooney, and A Murder at the End of the World miniseries wrapping up. So more movies, more TV, and of course the best of stuff to come. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Leave a comment, let me know it's good, and I'll see you next week.